Hello and welcome to this demonstration of Oracle Fusion Cloud applications. Here we start on the home page, which is configurable. Based on security, all of the applications I can use are displayed in the first screen here. Any notifications sent to me or requiring attention are also sent to the home page, as are announcements and analytics. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? Perhaps identifying trends, area of concern that need my immediate action might be pushed to the user in what's referred to as these infolets. Now, let's take the scenario, and here I'm logged on as James Bird, who's the Chief Financial Director, and let's just reinforce across the Fusion applications there's one data model. So if we look here for James Bird, and you'll see I've already got that in the search, it shows up the public information. On this right hand side, again, depending on my HCM privileges, I can see little or all, and here I've got everything from goals, development, down to family and emergency contacts. And most visually, everybody's going to see these various cards, so you see the reports directly into James Bird. And if you look at the top, we've got that route back to William Taylor. And if I click on William Taylor is the CEO of this fictional enterprise. I can drill into Anita Kennedy, and again, if I show the hierarchy of Anita Kennedy, you'll see James Bird, as well as Casey Brown and Caroline Valence, who's the finance director for France. So a very, very useful tool to see or very quickly visualize where a particular person sits within perhaps your job or position or the company hierarchy. So let's go back to the home page, and let's just look at entering employee expenses. So this is something we all will have to do sometime in our working lives, is enter some employee expenses. So here I've pulled up just Oracle Modern Best Practice, and we're looking at how we can process in terms of expenses in a digital environment. So the first decision is you define expense policies. You might restrict it to, say, meals expense below 25 currency units per day. You can only fly business class, all of those type of policies. You then capture the expense reports, and that might be via use of mobile, use of digital assistants, etc. You might have company credit cards, in which case the credit card expenses will automatically perhaps fed for your review and then submission for approval. You might have some cash advances or some travels that you want to form into expense reports, and then you'll analyze and audit, and then ultimately go to the invoice to payment to get reimbursed, or either reimburse the employee or perhaps reimburse the credit company directly. So here we've got a typical in terms of type of business process, and what I'm going to use in my example here is perhaps just use the digital assistant to capture a new expense report. So back into the system, you'll see I'm going to open up the digital assistant, and here you'll see I'm just going to click the create expense. And the digital assistant asks me, do you want to send a receipt picture or just type something like taxi for $25 of just a meal expense for 5 GB pounds? And you'll see using the OCR, Oracle Character Recognition, it's got some in terms of it's recognized the date, the total was 5 GBPs, meal, and it's got merchant part of it, which is black, but I want to be more specific. So what I'm going to tell it is that the merchant needs to be changed. So on here, I'm going to say the merchant is actually Black Sheep Wools. That's where I actually incurred this meal and drink expenditure. And you'll see there it says if it's right, if I want to put in something like a description, then if there's attendees or whatever, I can put more information. But in this case, I'm just going to do the minimum and hit create. And it should also check and tell me that this is a potential duplicate, because I have loaded one this morning. So it identifies this is a potential duplicate. So I could just type discard to get rid of it, but instead I'm just going to type keep. And again, it tells me it did create it, but it's missing perhaps some of the additional details. Perhaps in my expense rules, I haven't put in the employees or the attendees that have incurred these meal costs. So if I minimize my digital assistant and let's just open up the expenses UI. So see here sitting in the UI is my expense item. So I can just drill down to this one in terms of my black sheep walls. And you'll see in terms of our business rules, because I've flagged it as a meal, would need to have an attendee. And we're going to say it's James Bird, i.e. myself, who was the attendee. If there's 3 or 4 other people on the meal, then I'd put that in here. And let's just put a free text description called the meal demo in place. And here you'll see it's already loaded up that JPEG as an attachment. So if I open that up, I can see in terms of where that expense was created from. So having looked at that, realizing it's a duplicate, then I can just go to actions and I can delete it. And when I'm ready with all the items, and remember this could be also a mixture of cash, and if you've got a corporate credit card, all the credit card ones would be here. You can add them to an report, and I can do further actions such as my travel, apply for approval, or look at approvals, or apply for cash advances, etc. And remember, I have an option to also just create all the expense items directly from a spreadsheet and then load that spreadsheet on a regular basis. Let's process flow. Let's just look at another business process flow. James Bird's decided that perhaps he needs a new printer. So if I go to purchase requisitions, this gives me the same sort of effect of a typical online shopping cart. James could use a shopping list. So if he was a new employee, he might have things such as, carrier bags, stationery, pens, paper, etc. And he could just have that list that would add all the items. Alternatively, he could be looking or searching. Perhaps he's interested in, as I say, acquiring a new printer. So we should use the enterprise search to find possible printers. And what you can do on these printers is add them to a shopping cart or add them for comparative purposes. Let's just add in terms of, say, 3 to compare. And then you'll see down the bottom, I can pull up and compare. And let's say after all the discussions and the compare, what I'm going to do is add this most expensive one to the shopping cart. So you'll see it's been added to cart. So let's open up my shopping cart in this self-service procurement. And I could just submit it, but before I do, I just want to hit review. And in the review, I just want to highlight here another one of these objects or data define ones used everywhere. So here we're looking at the key accounting flex field. So ultimately, the expense for purchasing this new printer will be coded to this accounting key flex field. Here we've got 6 segments. Maximum is 30 segments. And notice segments that people recognize, such as company, account and cost center. And we've got other segments to derive specific reporting requirements. And that accounting code combination is used across all of the applications, as in this example here, where we're raising a purchase requisition. So I've also got part of your, as consultants, you'll be playing or configuring the approval rules. So I can manage the approval rules or send it down in a different approval track for this particular purchase. But I'm not going to do any of those today. I'm just going to submit that. And I'll get confirmation of the requisition. And I can open that up and see what it would look like in a PDF document that will be sent to the supplier. So there's a copy of the requisition that will be sent to the supplier, in this case consolidated suppliers. And if we come back to the working area, notice we have, in terms of the Canon printer and now this multifunctional printer that I have just requested, and notice the status is still pending approval. So here I've logged in as Caroline Valence, who's the financial director for the French subsidiary of this fictional company. Again, based on her security, all the applications are displayed and the various work areas give me to the landing pages and all the business tasks or steps. Notifications automatically sent to her, news and announcements, and also the analytics we're just going to review here. So you've got a mixture of predefined analytics, and you've also got user-defined or configured infolets. So you can build your own reports and analytics and incorporate those in these tiles referred to as infolets. So they're a graphical summary in terms of KPIs. And you'll see I'm 21 days from this, 21 days from the last period close, which was the 10th 22. I've got information on my ledgers, no intercompany outstanding transactions, and currently there's only one journal up to the value of 2.5 in error. Let's have a look at these expenses, because you'll see highlighting that there's a 30% increase in expenses. So let's see that in a little bit more detail. If I scroll down, you'll see the major sort of change or variation there is in packaging. So let me drill down to packaging. And there you'll see again the data shared across all of the applications. Here we've got the key accounting flex field, this time for a company France, so it's 311, and we've got an account and all cost centers, and we're comparing the change this year to the previous year. So we spent 86,000 euro last year. Currently in the same period we spent 112,440 euros. And again, I can drill in to that value and drill down to the period to see all the particular journals that have incorporated or driven that value, and you'll see they're all purchase invoices. And I could drill further, and that then gives me a choice to see the original transaction or view into the journal. So let's have a look at the original transaction to start with. So this drills right back to the source transaction, shows me in terms of those distribution costs, including the transactional tax. And if I want to see what that looks like in a journal, just one click and I've got my double entry bookkeeping of where that particular value is shown within my ledger or multi-ledgers. And you'll see in terms of, it will have, again, if I hover on here, those 6 segments in this case, but it could be up to 30 segments that configured or are part of the chart of accounts. Again, looking at analysis, and again I've taken a different role this time. I've logged in as Casey Brown, the system administrator, and from the Fusion application homepage, look, I'm going to hit the expenses dashboard, and this will bring up my expenses analytics. And we entered an expense with the digital assistant a little bit earlier in the demo. Here you see we've now got a breakdown of costs over years. So the good news is that currently all our expenses are in terms of the downward trend. And if I look at the pie chart, I can hover to show me how all of those entertainments are split between accommodation, any of our expense categories, such as car rental, meals, etc. And we've got the top policy violators. In this case, Lisa Jones is the one that seems to submit her expenses late. You can use that information then as a manager or as an expense auditor to perhaps have a word with the top offenders and try and streamline your process. So again, this concept of using BI to give directly to the user what do they need to know, what do they need to do. And finally, I just want to finish off with I will show you some of the things we're going to discuss later in the course when we're looking at perhaps the consultant's toolbox. So the security console, this is our one-stop shop to do all of the security configuration. So on this single console, look, I've just searched for James Bird, who we looked at earlier. He was the financial director for the UK business, and you'll see all the particular, in terms of job roles or abstract roles, he's been given to have access to the appropriate business process or task, and also the appropriate data. And you can see here also, as well as creating new users and roles, I can look at the security certificates, etc., all in the one console. So if I go back to my home page, if I go over to setup and maintenance, you'll find if I pick on, say, the two offerings of financials or the Fusion Accounting Hub, so in this case financials, and pick on the financial reporting structures we're going to talk about later, you'll see all the setup tasks are conveniently put in place in the correct order. And if I wanted to have a look at the optional as well as required tasks, I can filter this list. And in the task panel, I can also build my own implementation projects if I wish. From the home page, if I hit configuration, you'll see I can play with various tools to either play with forms or create new objects, such as using application composer, page composer, and normally these have to be done by sandboxes. So you see there's a link into sandboxes. And just to show you how quickly you can configure things, I've gone back to our Launchpad page, and these are various themes. A number come predefined, others you can add your own. So let's say my theme I want to change to crispy green, and then I log in again, and I'm logging in again here as my Casey Brown. And notice here, rather than have in terms of the Redwood themed news feed page, here I've got this simple green in terms of springboard page, and my navigator here is in the top left hand corner. So just showing you very quickly, by changing the themes, you can have a quick complete change, or you can make sure that the apps have a unique themed or brand for your particular implementation. So I've just returned to the home page. Hopefully this demonstration has highlighted some of the concepts and themes that you'll see in later lessons. The one data model, the single employee record used everywhere, the single chart of account structure used again across all the Fusion products, the options to configure and extend these applications to meet your business requirements, and ultimately use the modern tools to drive innovative business processes. Many thanks for watching. Please move on and have a look at the content in the follow-on lessons.